and good afternoon, whatever it happens to be, where you are, whenever you watch this. Gordon Causey and Candy the Wonder Dog, formerly Candy the Wonder Pup. Whoa, don't spill my coffee. I've got a couple people watching. Say hi. Normally, I notice there are a couple messages in the chat when I start, but oh, geez, you won't even let me touch. All right, I got to take care of Candy or else I can't start. Shake, lay down, speak. Come on up. There we go. Candy has been looked after. I didn't make her show her face too much. Live chat. Yeah, nothing up there yet. All right, here we go. Danny, praying hands, the cross, and his cup of coffee. And thank you for the thumb up, Danny. Today is, what are we, the 19th, is it? I think so. All right, I think today is the 19th of January. We're just after 9:45 p.m. in my time zone, Eastern time zone, and I'm going to be handling a deep, weighty topic, one that I'm probably ill-equipped for, but I'm going to try nonetheless. What did I title this? The Quest for and War over the Truth. A lot of people who come onto this channel will refer to themselves as truth seekers, truthers. The truther moniker I found came out after 9/11. A lot of people viewed the official narrative, the official story about Osama bin Laden in a cave in Afghanistan with simple pre-smartphone, basic cell phone technology, being able to subvert all the world's, the Western intelligence agencies and security apparatus, fly below the radar, and accomplish everything that happened that day. A lot of people looked and said that doesn't pass the smell test. Danny writes BS. And I certainly fell into that category. That was not the truth. Ultimately, to be entirely honest, I have my opinions. And while I take the official narrative as bogus, as a means to an end, I don't proclaim to know the full unvarnished truth. This is we live in a world that is swimming with lies. And then most recently, the COVID era and all the lies that were promulgated, propagandized on us, right from the very beginning, right from the origin story, right through to the lethality of the SARS-CoV-2 virus, to the incredible efficacy of the you-know-whats, stop transmission, and safe and effective, and all these branding statements. That branding statements are propaganda. They're an attempt to steer the population towards something. Typically a brand, Just Do It with Nike, Good to the Last Drop for Maxwell House. These are branding statements. When they came out with the deadly coronavirus, I viewed that as a branding statement meant to push people into a direction, deathly fear over the SARS-CoV-2 virus. No one was ever told to be, we never hear about, it didn't become a branding statement, the deadly cancer or deadly influenza or deadly malaria. It was the deadly coronavirus. So swimming in a world that is filled with lies and trying to find the truth is not easy. And I'm reminded of two stories. The first one was a gentleman that I worked with, Jerome Mayengi, a gentleman from what is currently called Congo, or the Democratic Republic of Congo, DRC. But back when I worked with him, this was back in the last century, when I was in my 20s and early 30s. It was called Zaire. And it's a French, former Belgian colony that used to be the Belgian Congo, became Zaire, and now it's the Democratic Republic of Congo, right in the heart, Central Africa. And Jerome told me this parable story, and I'm going to share it with you. It's interesting. I enjoyed hearing it from him, especially with his wonderful accent. But the story goes like this. There are two brothers, Truth and Lies, and it's Africa. They're wandering for many days, very tired, very hungry, and they stumble upon a village. And Truth says to his brother, look, we all know that men prefer the truth to lies, so let me do the talking. And they come upon a woman who's tending a hut, cleaning up around it, doing some gardening and such. And Truth speaks, and he says, my brother and I are strangers, and we've been traveling many days, and we are very hungry, very tired. Would it be possible to rest here and get something to eat? And the woman says to them that my husband is out hunting right now, and I can't make any decisions without him. He's the head of the household. Just sit over by that hill and wait for him to come home from hunting. So the brothers, they go and they sit down on the hill and they wait. And around the evening hour, the husband returns and the wife relates the story to him, and the husband is incensed. He's mad at his wife. He says, what are you doing? We are a welcoming and hospitable people, and you've taken these two brothers and you've had them just sit there all day without giving them any place to rest, without giving them any food. You horrible woman. And his wife says, now listen here, pal. I cook, I clean, I look after you. And now you want me to look after these two strangers? Forget it. If you let them, if you welcome them in and you look after them, well, then I'm gone. So the husband comes over to the two brothers and he says, look, I'm very sorry, but my wife, if I look after you, if I was to give you a place to rest and food and stuff, if I do that, my wife is going to leave me, and then who will look after me? So the two brothers leave and they wander even further. And finally they come to another village. And again, Truth says, let me do the talking. And so they approach the villagers, and Truth gives them what happens is they stumble upon this village and they're about to ask for food and lodging and rest, but they see that there's a big feast taking place and everyone is gorging themselves on a zebra or an antelope and eating tons. But the old people are only being thrown the bones and the scraps. And Truth, filled with righteous indignation, says, you horrible people, why are you only throwing your elderly the scraps, the bones, the remnant of the feast? They should be given the best portions. And the villagers, incensed at Truth's condemnation of them, kick them out. And so they're wandering even more. A couple more days go by and they come up to a third village. And this time Lies says, listen, we played it your way twice. You've spoken truth twice. And look where we are, hungrier and more tired than we've ever been. I get to do the talking. And they come into a village, and what has happened is everyone is in mourning. The chieftain of the village, his favorite wife has died. And they're all very sad, and they ask why, and they're told the reason, that the chief's wife has died, his favorite wife. So Lies says, take me to the chief. I am a shaman. I can raise her from the dead. So they hustle the two brothers, and Lies tells the chief, I am a shaman. I have magical powers. I can raise your wife from the dead. And the chief is thrilled. Raise her from the dead, and I'll give you whatever I can, please. And Lies says, well, it's a very difficult incantation. It takes a lot of energy, a lot of force of my life force to do it. And my brother and I have been traveling many days, and we're hungry and we're tired. We need food and we need rest. So they get a VIP hut. They're set up. They're given all the food they want, all the drink, given time to rest. And a day goes by, and the chief comes and he says, okay, now you've been fed and you're rested. And Lai says, I'm still not ready. I'm not strong enough yet. I need another 2 days. So for 2 more days, they are living the life of luxury. And then he finally proclaims himself ready. So he goes into the hut where this wife is lying in state, and he starts making loud, incomprehensible noises. And then he lets out a powerful scream. And the chief comes running in to see if his wife is alive. And Lai says to him, I was just at the point of restoring life to your dead wife when the spirit of your father descended upon me. And the spirit of your father said that if I would raise him instead of your dead wife, that he would give me a quarter of the kingdom, a quarter of the village. I would rule over half of it. A quarter of it. And the chief says, no, do not raise my father, because if you do, then I will no longer be chief. Raise my wife and I will give you a quarter of the village and the wealth. So he goes out, Lai goes through the incantations again. Again, he lets out a loud scream. Again, the chief comes running in and he says, is she alive? Is she alive? And the Lai says, well, again, I was just about there when the spirit of your grandfather came upon me and said that if I would raise him instead, that he would give me half of the village and the wealth. And the king, then the chief of the village, the living chief, realizing where this is going, he says, look, tell you what, leave my wife dead and let's forget the whole thing, and I'll give you half and we'll call it even. And the moral of the story being that human beings, humanity, we prefer to be lied to. That was a story that Jerome told me many, many years ago, back in the 90s. There's another one that is probably a little more well-known because I've seen it shared on Facebook, Twitter, probably on Instagram and others, of a depiction of a woman coming out of a well who's naked. And the story, and it'll include a little parable, a little story about how Truth was walking by a well in her fine apparel. And Lies from deep within the well lured her and invited her to take off her clothes and get in the well and enjoy the luxurious water. Truth did this, disrobed, stripped naked, climbed into the well, and then Lies stole her garments, put them on, and left Truth hiding in the well naked. You've heard of the naked Truth. And has been parading around ever since, disguising herself as the Truth. I might have butchered that one a bit, but I think that's the general thrust of it, that so often we see things dressed up as truth, but underneath there lies. And we could say the 911 story about Osama bin Laden and the whole bit. Danny seems to like it, says 100 with the thumb up. So how do we find the truth? And I wrote down some notes here, just some bullet points to kind of give me some focus on this, because there's a lot of different aspects, and I'm probably not the best person. This is almost like a university course on philosophy. That's what I feel the educational background one would need to try and tackle this question of what is truth. And I, as regular viewers know, I'm a Bible-believing Christian. And there's a quote from the Bible that I probably said it in dozens, maybe 100 or more videos that I put out. And that is Jesus's assertion that I am the way and the truth and the life. The way, the truth, the life. And the passage is, I didn't even know. I know the quotation so well, and I know it's from the book of John, but I wasn't actually aware of the chapter and verse. But before I go on, Danny's writing, when you have eliminated all which is impossible, then whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth. Sherlock Holmes. It's Occam's razor, is that the most likely answer is the most obvious answer. But let's break this down where it's Gospel according to John, chapter 14, verse 6. Jesus said to him, I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father but by me. The word of the Lord, thanks be to God. I think it's important or informative to read the context around that. This was said to Thomas. Jesus is announcing his forthcoming. This is just before Jesus's betrayal, when he's handed over for his quote unquote trial and then led to the cross. If we read, I'm going to start right from the beginning of the chapter 14, verse 1. Jesus is speaking, let not your hearts be troubled. Believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house there are many rooms. If it were not so, would I have told you that I go to prepare a place for you? And when I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again, and I will take you to myself, and where I am, you may be also. And you know the way where I am going. Thomas said to him, Lord, we do not know where you are going. How can we know the way? And then we get the quote from 14:6. Jesus said to him, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father but by me. I find it interesting that the truth is the second of 3 points. I am the way, I am the truth, I am the life. This is what Jesus is saying. I am the way. Our destination, we want to go, we all are aiming for truth. Everyone wants to know the truth. But more importantly is to be pointed, named in the right direction. That way you can find the truth. And when you find the truth, you find life. That is to say, peace, tranquility, no misery, no pain, no death, no anguish, no every tear and every hurt and every bliss. That's what we desire. But first we have to find the way that points us in the right direction. And Jesus provides us that way. So he is the way. He is the truth that we seek. And then that will lead to life. It's kind of a play on that other famous bromide, the truth will set you free. There are so many lies around. And I'm going to just go through a few of them that we're being pummeled with daily. I referenced earlier the origin story of COVID. And it strikes me that when it came to the origin story of COVID, we were given the truth before they'd established there was no credible evidence to point toward that conclusion. The conclusion, we were given the conclusion came first. And the conclusion was that the SARS-CoV-2 virus originated in a wet market of Wuhan, China, because of an interaction between a bat and a human being. We all know now that that's 99.99999% untrue. There's maybe a tiny little scintilla chance that it could be true. But the problem is they've gone into bat populations all over China and all over the world, and they've tried to find the origin. They've tried to find the SARS-CoV-2 virus extant in a bat population somewhere and have come up completely dry, which led them to come up with a second bogus, in my opinion, origin story. And that is that the virus jumped from a bat to a raccoon dog and then mutated in the raccoon dog, and then an interaction between a human and a rat and a raccoon dog. That's the jump off point. But they have never proven that one either. They have never found the SARS-CoV-2 virus extant in a raccoon dog population, which leaves us to what many conclude, and I think most on this channel agree with, and that is a lab. They took coronaviruses in that lab in Wuhan, China, probably working in concert with other labs, probably some funded by Anthony Fauci's own NIH as well, perhaps even our own Winnipeg lab in Canada, and created a pathogen, a virus, SARS-CoV-2. There's that. Then we can go back further. We can go to politics. And before the election in 2020, Donald Trump, in that election when he was running against Joe Biden, was asked if he would accept the results of the election. And Donald Trump said, if it's conducted fairly and properly, yes. But he wasn't going to give a blanket statement. But the truth was already dressed up. And the truth was that US elections are always fair and honest and above board. And there's never any meaningful amount of fraud. There's some fraud, sure, but never enough to change the results. And so whatever the results are, you have to accept them, because the truth is that fraud of a significant enough scale to flip the results is an impossibility. And so then we got to the situation where, for the first time in American electoral history, they had millions, I don't know how many millions of those ballots came in by mail. And then everyone went to bed thinking that Donald Trump had won re-election. 75 million Americans had voted for him, more than had ever voted for any presidential candidate in US history, more than he had received in 2016. And every president running for re-election who saw his vote total increase always got reelected. But overnight, mail-in ballots were counted, and it flipped the results. And Joe Biden surged up to 81 million votes. And so in all the key battleground states, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Indiana, etc., the mail-in votes were enough to overturn the previous night's results in just a few hours. Pennsylvania is going for Trump. Nope, now it's going for Biden after counting the mail-in ballots. And if you read up a bit on this, of course, they would have to sign. The person voting there and mailing in their ballot would have to sign it. What's the signature verification process? I think there's a reason why absentee ballots and mail-in ballots had been used so sparingly in previous elections and in the most recent election, and that is because the amount of scrutiny needed to ensure that there's no fraud is incredible amount of scrutiny needed. But if you make the claim as truth that there's not significant enough fraud in the US electoral system to change the result of a presidential election, if that's your truth starting out, well, then any facts that contravene that, you can ignore them. Or you can just simply not do the investigation. You can simply not do the inquiry and determine that, the claims are baseless, because everyone knows that the election was fair and above board because we told you it was beforehand. So we don't even we don't have to go through and verify all those signatures. Millions upon millions would be impossible to do it. Everything's good. Climate change. The climate change story. The truth is already YouTube. I don't know. Sometimes my videos get flagged. Sometimes they don't. It depends on how much of a central theme climate is. If climate's a central theme, because I express a contrary opinion to what YouTube and Google say is the truth, they say will contradict my opinion and put it out there all dressed up like out of the well. They'll take truth's clothes, put it on, and say it is a proven fact that man-made burning of fossil fuels is the principal contributor to climate change in the current era. And it strikes me, that's you're taking, I'm not sure I'm using this, a priori is your destination is truth. I'm not sure I'm using that term a priori or a priori right, but you've established that as the truth already, so you can ignore any facts that contradict your made up truth. And truth is very important because people want it. They want to know that they have the truth. And anyone who doesn't ascribe to your version of the truth believes a lie. And you see this all the time in the climate debate. Your climate change denier means you're a denier of the truth. If you question the results, if you have the temerity to question the results of the 2016 election, you are a denier of the truth. If you dare to question the absolute, that vaccines are the greatest invention, even greater than the wheel. If you even dare to question that predominating view, you are a heretic. You are a denier of truth. And this gets it makes navigating this world incredibly difficult, especially when you are surrounded by individuals who have bought into propaganda around everything. And we know these individuals who bought into everything about COVID, who, buy into everything regarding climate change, the election, validity of the election results in 2016 are a bit of another matter because there was never any meaningful investigation done into the claims that, and it would be perhaps nigh on impossible to go, and it would take so long to verify all those signatures properly. You can't just have an election official going, yeah, it looks like the same to me. You would need experts in handwriting to determine whether or not there are any forgeries taking place. You can't go back and then can you go back and ask all the people who sent in mail-in ballots, did you send in a mail-in ballot? You can't ask them who they voted for. It's a secret vote. And it strikes me, just a couple quick points on this is, I don't want this to go on forever because it certainly could, but there seems to be an advantage for the first mover. The first mover, to get that quote unquote truth embedded into the consciousness of as many people as possible is of a huge advantage. That's why around the election, you've got to promote the idea that the Americans have to accept the results of any and every election, regardless of whether it's mail-in ballots or people going in and voting in person overwhelmingly. And, you're not allowed to question the results no matter what. And that was done before the 2020 election. The origin story, get it out there. stated as fact, embedded into the conscious mind of the population. Same with safe and effective, safe and effective, safe and effective, stops transmission. Well, lessen severe outcomes. Lessen severe outcomes. It would be worse without it. It would be worse without it. Thank goodness you had it. Even though you ended up in hospital, it would have been worse. You would have died without it. And just keep promoting and promoting and promoting. We all know how propaganda works. You just repeat propaganda is based on the idea that if you repeat a lie long enough, it becomes true. They did it in Nazi Germany. In Nazi Germany, they had the Kaiser Wilhelm Institute of Genetics, Anthropology, and Eugenics, stating that it was a proven fact that Jews, Gypsies, and other races were inferior to the superior Aryan race, and that they represented a threat to the health and security of the good Aryan German people. And if you dared to question that, what did you know? Or do you work for the Kaiser Wilhelm Institute? Are you a scientist? Science says. Science has proven, the science of eugenics has proven that Jews are an inferior group. Who are you to dare question the all-knowing science? Science is a weapon, and science in our world, sadly, has become truth for a lot of people. Follow the science. I believe in following Christ, following God, following biblical wisdom. Well, these are lies, is what the culture tells us now. This is just superstitious writing for unintelligent people. Follow the science. Smart people follow the science. People who never took a science course beyond high school. And so what happens is, in our desire for truth, what I find is people take shortcuts. They decide what the truth is before properly doing any investigation. They want a shortcut. We've become a very lazy population. We've outsourced our brains to our handheld devices and tablets and phones and everything else. If you want to know anything, just ask Google, ask Siri, ask Alexa. And you don't have to think. You don't have to store anything up here. You don't even have to investigate. You don't have to question. You can get right to the end. You can get right to the goal. And your goal is to know the truth. And so here, we'll hand it to you on a silver platter. And now you can ignore everything else. What is the main driver of climate change? What we're experiencing in the world? Oh, it's the burning of fossil fuels. Oh, great. I don't have to know anything else because I know the truth. And so any evidence that comes along that contradicts that truth can be ignored. Well, forget it. I already know the truth, so I can ignore anything else. Everything else is propaganda. Everything else is bad players trying to steer me away from the truth, but I already know the truth. How did you come to know the truth? Somebody told me. Google, Siri, what is it, Gemini? Now you've got Google, I think it is, using AI. I think they use this, I think it's called Gemini. And they'll answer all your questions. Wow. All right, Danny's filling up. Danny's of the opinion that COVID-19 bracket 84, that it was to find out how compliant we are. And they learned, and I would not disagree with them for a second. And Cryptomiri says they know what they have done. However, yeah, they know what they've done. But, we get into Machiavelli and this idea that the end justifies the means. And if that your end is good, then the means to achieve that end are good. There's something called Malthusian or lifeboat ethics. If you're in a life raft that will hold 20 people, That's the maximum carrying capacity is 20 adults. But you have 35 people on the life raft and it's starting to sink. What do you do? It's called lifeboat ethics. Well, you got to throw 15 people overboard. Does the means throwing 15 people overboard justify the end of saving the 20? And if you believe that you're facing a dire result, there are people right now who believe that the Earth, that planet Earth, can only sustain about 1.9 billion people long term. That the amount of food, energy, and resources that the Earth generates on a renewable basis, that it's only enough to support 1.9 billion people at current rates of consumption. But yet we have 8 billion. And they say the rationale given, I've read a paper by the University of Texas on this, the only reason we've been able to reach 8 billion plus is because the planet had, past tense of the verb, large reserves. And that now we have those reserves are largely gone. And that if something drastic doesn't happen in the coming 10, 20 years, that we're going to face global privations of horrific scale, and that we'll be living on a planet that it's not going to be worth living on. Now, if you believe that, over the long term, that this planet can only sustain 1.9 billion people, then by what means can you avert that horrific end? And do the ends justify the means? You have to do perhaps something horrific, throw 15 people out of that lifeboat. It's one thing if it is empirically true that lifeboat will only hold 20 average adult-sized individuals, and you have 35 and it's sinking. Now you have empirical truth. Do you have empirical truth about these? Typically, they involve computer modeled simulations that are forecasting the future. So you can't measure whether or not they're accurate. You can't compare them with something real world because you're looking at an oracle. You're trying to look into the future. And do these computer model simulations take into account enough of the variables? How many variables are there? Are there too many to computate? I think there are. Anyway, Danny's writing, well, you can put lipstick on a hog and call it Monique, but it's still a pig. And then he writes, all praise scientism, ha ha ha. And then he knows someone who bought it and bought it. I think I know what you're referring to. You typed that when I was talking about something else. And Danny's recommending a book called Propaganda by Edward Bernays. So, and Baha say the sheeple. So let me go through. We have the first mover advantage, get the lie out there prominently early, embedded into people's conscious brains, and then people will take shortcuts because they'll be happy for that truth being handed to them on a silver platter without having to do any investigation or thought themselves. Great, I know the truth. I now know what to ignore. I listen to the high priests of scientism so often, and it all comes down to what we aim at. And this is where I get back to Jesus saying, I am the way, I am the truth, and I am the life. The way is so important. You can't take a shortcut. You can't arrive at the truth without first setting your aim in the right direction, and you better be aimed at the right thing. If you're not aimed at the right thing, if you're aiming toward a lie, you're heading toward destruction. I heard Jordan Peterson explain it once in terms of if I want to set a course across the stage, I'm going to immediately eliminate all the facts that don't matter in my goal. My goal is to get from here to there. I want to get from there to there, from here to there, and I want to do it as efficiently and as expeditiously with as few problems as possible. So I'm going to take into account the what furniture do I need to navigate, the lighting, whatever. And I'm going to eliminate, in terms of Jordan Peterson, he says, I'm going to ignore the audience because they're unimportant towards this aim, and I'm going to navigate my way toward that. And you ignore so much. And if your aim isn't true, if you're not aiming at the truth, you're going to end up in a very bad place. And the question is, how do you determine what to aim at? How do you determine what is the truth? We get handed it. Oh, the SARS-CoV-2, the novel coronavirus, and the immune system doesn't know how to deal with this. It's 10 times more deadly than seasonal flu. There's 2 million Americans are going to die of this in just the first year alone as a direct cause. No comorbidities. It'll be the direct cause. COVID's going to be the direct cause of 2 million deaths in America. And how do you determine if truth, if that is true or if it's false? And this is where I kind of branch a little bit away from the Bible, but not entirely. Jesus was he came into this world at a time when the predominating worldview was Greek. And the Greeks handed us something, and I believe the term is dialectics. And dialectics is the idea that you can arrive at the truth through dialogue and discussion. I think it's interesting that all the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, Acts, the entire New Testament is actually written in Greek, koine or koinine, I don't know how to pronounce it, in Greek. Jesus was speaking Aramaic. That's the widely held view. But the Gospels as we have them and all the New Testament is written in Greek. Actually, when there's a version of the Bible called the Septuagint, and the Septuagint, broadly speaking, is the Old Testament writings in Greek. There's actually, it's kind of funny because there's no actual book there was nothing circulating called the Septuagint. It's just kind of a blanket umbrella term for the Old Testament writings that were in Greek. But even when the gospel writers quote the Old Testament, they quote the Septuagint versions, and there are times when the Septuagint and the way it frames things differs from the original Hebrew. And yet the Gospels, the writers of the New Testament were very familiar with the Greek rendering of the Old Testament. And the Greeks gave us this term dialectics, which is the idea that the way to determine the truth is by having dialogue and examination and discussing things. And that is the way you find truth, through debate, Socrates or Plato. There are people who think Socrates himself didn't exist, that Socrates was the invention of Plato, because Socrates didn't write anything. Plato, our only introduction to Socrates is through Plato. But they would have these symposiums, these agreements, trying to establish what truth is. And remember, I think it's Plato's Republic, where they talk about, finding truth in an individual, justice, truth. We kind of think of them, something is just, it's true. How do you find that in a society, in a town, in a city state? How do you establish it? Well, let's look to the individual. And if we can find it in the individual, what is just acting, then we can extrapolate that out to the broader society and create a just society. And so this idea of dialectic reasoning and argument and debate was how the Greek mindset, and in the world to which our Lord and Savior incarnated, this was part and parcel. And yet, when it comes to so many of the debates we're having, whether it be political, whether it be health and the origin story of SARS-CoV-2, or the efficacy of certain interventions, or the climate change debate, the debate is not taking place because and this I think is a telling aspect, is that someone who wants to shut down the debate, in my view, that's a pretty darn good indication that they're lying, that they're serving a different master. And I'll wrap it up by bringing, another bit of scripture in where Jesus is with the Pharisees and he says, you are of your father, who was a liar from the beginning and is the father of all lies. When a narrative is being promulgated and and those foisting this narrative on us, be it on climate, being on a political narrative, being it about SARS-CoV-2 and everything COVID related, or any other health issue, bird flu, monkeypox, who knows? If they refuse to debate and if they gaslight and engage in straw man arguments, which you see all the time, to my mind, that's an amazing indicator that they're lying on steroids and to look in the other direction. But to do that is difficult in today's world because you are going to be condemned by the broader culture. The broader culture is fed into the matrix. They're swallowing that blue pill every day and just accepting, and they're allowed significant, probably darn near the majority. And they're loud and they're bold and they're arrogant because they're convinced they know the truth. I was talking to a gentleman at work, a fellow ex-service member of the CAF. And I said, where do you get your news? And he goes, oh, I listen to a variety, ABC, NBC, BBC. I don't listen to Fox though. He said, oh, okay. So you get everything from the mainstream. Well, yeah, but different sources. And he's one of these individuals who's arrogantly convinced that what he knows is truth. Makes life difficult. But ultimately, I'm going to do my next video. I'm reading 2nd Chronicles. I just got to the end of it. I think I have one chapter left to read in 2nd Chronicles. And I got to the part about King Hezekiah. And what happened when they found the books of Moses in the temple after restoring the temple, doing work. They came across the law of Moses, the books of Moses, and they read through it and they realized, oh my gosh, we are so far off the path. We are so far off the path. And so Hezekiah then had the books of Moses read to the entire people. And then they declared a feast. They held a Passover. They held the Passover, the 7-day, the Feast of Unleavened Bread. It perfectly. Had not done it for so long that they didn't do everything right. And that'll be my next video. Because there seems to be such a desire, especially among Christians, to insist on a certain way of doing things, a certain day of worship, celebrating Christmas, celebrating Easter. There's so much division within the Christian church, within the Big C church. And the theme of it's going to be, what matters most is the orientation of the heart. People can be oriented correctly. And I think we need to have some kindness towards those whose aim is off, who are believing the liars and have been seduced by that he that was a liar from the beginning and the father of all lies. We have to be gracious to realize that it's not that their heart is in the wrong place. A lot of the people who followed the guidelines and did everything they were told to do, they did it out of a proper motivation. They did it because, well, I don't really need to do it, but if it helps someone else, I will. Even though I don't really want it, but they wouldn't lie to me. They wouldn't lie to me. And if it's going to help other people, so their heart was oriented in the right place. Same with people who wore masks or continue to wear masks. Their heart, in all likelihood, probably 99% of the time, is oriented in the right place. I don't want, I'm feeling ill and I don't want to spread my germs, so I'm putting on a mask. Can you keep your hands off of it so that you stop spreading your gunk all over the place? Had a conversation with a guy I work with who's been wearing a mask lately. And he's doing it primarily out of protection. His wife has some health issues, and so he's very hyper concerned about bringing anything home. And I tried to impress on him the fact that it's a dirty world we live in. It's a dirty, broken pathogens, germs, bacteria. They're everywhere. And this isn't going to, if you think that is a panacea or even a meaningful, at least wear it right. And he pawed at it and I said, look, you just touched it. He didn't even realize he was touching the mask and then spreading and touching things, which was what he was doing because he was engaged in his job at the time, which involved touching all manner of things. And then he's touching his mask, a petri dish, a breeding ground for germs, bacteria, pathogens, viruses. Crazy world. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Little disjointed. I just have bullet points. I am working tomorrow. I got to be up at 5 o'clock in the morning, so I should be getting to bed soon. I'm just going to read the last few comments. Looks like it's Danny and Laurent Lizard Hut. Danny's writing, people have stopped critically thinking. Come to think of it, they've stopped thinking. And this is one area where, to use more biblical wisdom, where Jesus exhorts his disciples, look at the log in your own eye. It's easy to spot but we got to be self-critical too. And I think there are times when we likewise, climate change. Could I be wrong? Absolutely. I'm not a climatologist. I'm not a meteorologist. That's not my bailiwick. I do not have the requisite education. So all I can do is listen to all sides of the debate with no predetermined conclusion. So long as I'm doing that, but I cannot automatically assume that everyone on the anthropogenic climate change side is necessarily wrong. They may have valid points. I listen to both sides, try and have no predetermined, but what strikes me is when a narrative is being shut down, when someone is using gaslighting and straw man arguments to put down an argument, the ones engaged in that type of activity, I look at their whatever point of view they're expressing, and I think, well, it's probably a strong chance it's a lie. If you have to, if you're engaging in gaslighting, straw manning, and censoring alternative viewpoints, that's the modus operandi of liars. And anyway, that's as much as I'll say on that. Danny's writing that, getting back to what I was saying about, the orientation of the heart. He's saying the road to hell is paved with good intentions. True enough. But we have to be gentle when confronting individuals, not you're going to hell. You're going to die. Danny's writing red pilled circa 2020. I guess that's probably in reference to yourself. Laurent Lizard Hot writes, I once thought that the devil could be saved. Now I sometimes question my own salvation. Thanks for being here. God bless you. And thank you for being here as well. Questioning your own salvation. I don't think that's a bad thing. I don't think questioning, and I do too. A lot of Christians do. We question our own salvation. Am I being good enough? We have to realize that we're never going to be good enough. Otherwise, if we could get to salvation on our own, through our own efforts, then Jesus' sacrifice on the cross, his death and resurrection was all in vain. We didn't need it. You can do it on your own. But by being introspective and asking the question, that means to me, your feet are on the right path. And then Danny's writing, take a boat ride sans safety vest, but I'll wear a safety vest on shore to protect you. That's getting back to masks. Oh man, I had a thought about that too. You're sending you've got a boat going, Toronto Island Ferry probably holds like 300 people. But there are only, 30 life vests, and it starts to sink. Well, what do? Do you chop the 30 life vests into 3,000 little pieces, or into 300, 300 passengers, 30 life vests? Do you chop them up into little 300 little bits and then give one to everyone? A useless little tiny thing that won't keep anything afloat? Or do you find out who are the people who can't swim and need a life vest and give it to them? And it strikes me that what we did in COVID was we said we chopped up the 30 life vests, and rather than because there are people who are genuinely at risk. Like, go to a nursing home, which is heaven's waiting room. People going there to die in Ontario. It's like 75% of the population in nursing homes and long-term care, they already have circulatory and cardiovascular diseases. So it's like 86% need extensive help just getting dressed or having a bath or going to the bathroom, or they can't do the basics. And I forget all the statistics I read from the Ontario Long-Term Care Association, but like a large percentage are on 10 or more medications, cheating death for another day. And if the aim is to keep these people alive, well, pour all your resources into protecting those individuals and leave the rest of society, for whom, why give a little tiny bit of a flotation device to an Olympic swimmer? Toronto Island Ferry's going down. Oh, well, it's not that far. You can swim to shore, swim to a boat. Not everyone needs a life preserver. Danny wrote, the man who started the Weather Network said climate change is a scam. Yeah, I've seen that video. It was on CNN. And of course, he was gaslit and strawmanned, and all the intellectually weak arguments are used to shut down anyone who dares to question what they dress up as truth. And yeah, underneath those nice clothes and that the nice production values and everything that CNN provides is garbage a lot of the time. And Denny says, if you get censored, it is because you're right. Invariably, that's the case. I didn't bring up the situation in Israel and everything else, but that's another one where I find people have a preconceived notion that's been handed to them that they've done zero investigation on. And they say Israel stole the land. And so that's their starting point, is that Israel came into being by stealing the land from people, that there was this magical place called Palestine ruled by the Palestinians, and that Jews had it, that the Jews came and it was ripped away from this Palestinian state and it was handed to the Jews, and ignoring the historical fact that for, I guess it's in and around 500 years, that this land was ruled by a colonial power, the Ottoman Empire. They ruled over this land, and then the British ruled over this land. And anyone living in it was ruled by either the Ottoman Turks, a colonial power based in Turkey, or by a colonial power based in Great Britain. But people have accepted this. They think it's the truth, that there was this, Palestinian state, that Palestinians ruled themselves until these Jews came along and took their land away from them. And it's based on fiction. The truth is often, it can be nuanced. But that's enough for now. I've gone on over an hour. God bless. Thank you for watching, engaging, Danny especially, because you filled up the live chat more than anyone, but you invariably do. There we go. I've gotten better at the live chat. And I'm going to end with my usual blessing, not my blessing. It's the blessing that Aaron spoke over God's covenant chosen people. From Numbers 6, verse 24. The Lord bless and keep you. The Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. And that's something we need in this world. We all need peace. Peace in here to confront what's out there. Because out there, this world is ruled by the prince of this world, who was a liar from the start and is the father of all lies. And if you want to get into a relationship with the truth, well, you need to follow the way. And Jesus is the way. And that truth will lead you to eternal life. So God bless, and we'll see you all in a night or two. There we go.